Hi there, it's Tim Lou from Foolproof here. Today I'm joined by Ronnie Battista. Ronnie Battista's practice lead for experience design at Slalom Consulting. He also co-created a program for experience design at Rutgers University. It's my pleasure to say hello to Ronnie Battista.
Hey Tim, how are you?
I'm very well, mate. How the devil are you?
Always great to talk to you. Long time. I can't wait to see you soon.
I'm really looking forward to Amsterdam. Ronnie, so this video series that we're doing is it's a conversation that we hope we'll have ongoing, which is really to talk about experience design and experience design strategy. And you're my second person I'm speaking to, so thanks very much for giving us some time. I think that where I'd probably start is on your LinkedIn profile. I think you described yourself as an experience design strategist. Could you describe what experience design strategy is and what you do?
Sure. That's a great question because we're often asked, especially when you consider user experience, customer experience, service design, experience design, product design. What is the strategy thing? Because again, strategy is often an overused term. The way I want to make sure that we frame the experience in business is really at the highest level, starting with what is the business strategy. Oftentimes, our field, which is filled with some great folks, but a lot of it is really more of a focus on what is the UI look like, what's the experience of a particular product like. I mean, even at the stage of what's the end-to-end journey, which is a little bit more on the strategy side. But I think ultimately, the first questions we should be asking our companies and our clients when we're working with them is, what is the business problem you're trying to solve? What is the business strategy you're trying to realize? Is it top line growth? Is it bottom line productivity savings? Is it entering new markets? Is it growing your existing customer base? Is it enhancing and improving shareholder value? There's lots of those questions that I think that strategy really deals with. My view of experience design and strategy is that first and foremost, we need to be at that table, at the big table in the beginning, to make sure that what those business goals and values and KPIs are aligned to the customers, employees, the audience that they're serving.
It's a big job. And so, when you think about experience design strategy, I guess what does that look like as a process, and what are the components of that?
So again, I think one of the first pieces is having a solid understanding of of the current business climate. Certainly reviewing the financials, reviewing effectively what people talk about 5 to 10 year plans don't exist anymore, but really what is the sort of the 18 to 36 month plan, for an organization, and then making sure that there is an understanding across those at the table from the business side, finance, product, operations, marketing, HR, that there is a solid, agreed, and aligned understanding of what any changes, be they technical, process, people-wise, how that is going to be framed in the larger understanding of what the customer experience is. Ultimately, this all rolls down to customers. So even if it's an employee-based project, right, those employees are in service of customers. So the upfront things we want to do is make sure that we have a good understanding of what those typical customer segments are via personas, and then take those and as best as possible frame out the end-to-end experience and be able to talk to what again, the typical journey map things, right? What are the touch points, the channels, the processes, obviously the thinking and feeling pieces, and certainly where possible underpinning that with the technology that's supporting this end-to-end experience. So even more from an ecosystem mapping perspective, really thinking about what a service blueprint would look like. That to me is, in terms of being able to start an engagement, that's one of the first things that I would advocate you undertake.
Yeah, I pretty much start most projects with those elements or those steps. I guess, what are the conditions for creating an experience design strategy that's going to take? I mean, I think I read somewhere that less than 10% of strategies ever get executed on.
Yeah.
I think, well, what in your experience, what are the conditions, or is it a business maturity thing or responsibility? What are the things that really help strategy take hold?
Well, that is a great question that the answer itself could go on for a very long time. I think that question is framing the crux of, I think, what is one of the largest challenges, because I don't think that anything that we do on its face we could show to anybody and they wouldn't get and be like, yeah, that's great, we should do that. The execution of that is usually where things go wrong. There's a lot of reasons. I would say that there are technical limitations, right? People might just be mired to a legacy system that, while they'd love to get off of it, they can't. So you've got to kind of do your best to get the most horsepower out of that. There are basically just industry challenges. Specific industries have been doing the same thing for a very long time. It's a challenge for them to be able to move around that. Most notably in industries like healthcare and financial services, which have highly regulatory and compliance-based things that prevent them from maybe doing the best they can do in providing a customer experience. But if I was to really boil it up to one thing that I have seen consistently across all industries in terms of the relative success and failure rate, it's around true cultural transformation. Having the executive, the C-suite invested, engaged, and believing in this is really, I think, the most important recipe to success. And I'll just add on top of that it's one thing, if a CX transformation is considered a program, so something that has a start and end date with a certain amount of money, and then we're going to get there within 3 months, 6 months, without setting appropriate guardrails around short-term wins, really long-term goals. Once again, even the best intended efforts are really going to be at risk for not taking root if it's not something that's followed through.
I mean, I couldn't agree more, and I do think that's at the heart of actually the big challenge for people like you and I who are trying to do this job, actually trying to help organisations. Is it's all very well and good to come up with the vision and even the roadmap and look, this is, guys, just do this, is actually that plan's going to have to change because of the nature. The world's just become more unpredictable. I think that's probably the big theme that I'm sort of seeing across all of the sectors that we deal with here. And so the people in the organisation have to be prepared for change and being able to adjust and adapt. So the strategy in itself can't do that. Actually, they have to build up the muscles and the skills to be able to do that. I mean, I think, have you sort of experienced in your work where you've been able to kind of affect or nudge or even just have a kind of a little bit of impact around culture and working practices?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a particular client that I work with that has made a very significant investment in a customer-centric organization. The interesting piece is that there is still a little bit of a challenge in making that connection because, again, this is an organization that is, again, being viewed by some as, the next flavor of 3 years of customer-centric thinking. One of the small ways that I'm trying to help affect some change there is just helping make connections at the team level within the organization, so there is some degree of understanding of their language, understanding of their challenges, understanding most notably of how they're incented. and making sure that folks have those understandings across teams. I think one of the big things we know, and I believe you're reading a book that I got a lot of mileage out of and value out of, which was Team of Teams by Stanley McChrystal, is really that idea of embedding folks from different backgrounds and sort of views of the same elephant, and allowing time for those teams to sort of learn from each other and build that trust. We are in an extremely, competitive and fast-moving environment where, traditional companies are being, upended by upstarts that come in without any of the institutional baggage. So people have a general sense, as they do, throughout the decades. But I think more so now than I've seen is a sense of anxiety about kind of what their role is and how they're going to be considered a valuable member of an organization moving, at greater velocity. And so finding ways to have people feel that they can look left and look right, and that everyone is sort of marching in service together, I think is a big key. So long-winded way to say I'm really trying to find ways to just say, hey, I know you're working on this, this particular project or app or something. You might want to just liaise with X person in marketing and just sort of share and maybe get some of their ideas and just start a little bit of that bottom-up cultivation of various teams within an organization.
Ronnie, and I want to say thank you for letting me know about that book. I mean, there's a couple of ideas in there that have really resonated with me. To sort of pick up from what you've been saying, this sort of idea that people need purpose and trust. We need to be this sort of hierarchical organisation, sort of industrial age organisation that most of the big corporates probably that I work with and that you work with doesn't work actually now in the age of digital. And so actually people need a sense of purpose and empowerment and trust. And this idea of extreme transparency. Everyone can see the same information, and knowledge can't be kind of the basis of your power in an organisation is a really powerful idea, and actually starting to even inform actually how I might even talk about practice here. And why do you think experience design and experience design strategy seems to be of its time now? I mean, I think we started having this conversation probably about 5 or 6 years ago, Ronnie. But really in the last couple of years, I do think there's been some things happen in the world that's really put us to the forefront as a potential, sort of solution to some of the problems that we're having in society.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting, I think, and again, I think that's, you and I are both, taking away a lot of those, the elements of this book, but I think experience design, and again, we have these conversations many years. I think the reason that experience design is particularly well placed for the changing business environment is because our focus is again on that customer. And again, I always, none of these phrases that we throw out, but no business exists without a customer, right? And the fact is unless somebody is buying something from your company, you're not a company, you're out of business, right? So by us being able to say, marketing, I know you're trying to reach this to reach your goals and digital impressions, whatever. We know you have business goals around this, but ultimately it's because we want to get more customers or again, achieve this business goal. Operations, you need to keep, this running at some degree of profitability, et cetera, et cetera. But this is all because we're trying to run a business that's serving our customers. So I like to look at us as that very neutral, but advocate level for the customer that crosses different parts of the organization, that allows us to be, I can come in and again, it's why I always think is we have the easiest job in the world is, I twice a week I'll say to somebody like, I know you think that they want the purple button, and I know she thinks they want the green button. I don't think either of you matter. I think what we need to do is ask your customers, ask your employees, what do they want? So it allows us. It's a bit of a it provides a little bit of what I'd call it's just a neutrality. I think that says this isn't about this isn't about what my goal is. This is about our customer's goal.
Yeah, I think this idea of some sort of post-shareholder value creation, sort of the era of shareholder value creation is coming to an end. There needs to be something after that. I think really speaks to that. In terms of, I mean, what really sort of marks you, Ronnie, we've known each other for many years, and I think what marks you out as a leader within the industry is the amount of time and energy that you've put back into the industry in terms of developing practice, professionalizing in the industry, and also helping that next generation of designers and strategists and researchers build up skills that are useful to businesses and organizations. What are the big skills, or what are the big areas for skills development that you see are required to sort of meet this very big challenge now for experience design strategists?
So I'd probably answer that two ways. One is beyond our field. I think there is the need to cross-train the basics of experience design, understanding the importance of strategy, research, design, evaluation throughout an organization. At Slalom, one of the things that we do, which I'm particularly proud of, is in teaching the Rutgers course. Early on, my conversations with my leadership in New York was, when I came to this field, I was a business analyst and was sort of turned on to the field because I was seeing that we were putting systems in that and really weren't talking to the actual people. So, in Slalom, we've got folks that are information management analytics. We've got folks in the delivery leadership space, organizational effectiveness, custom development. And part of my thinking is, let's not just have the UX team or the XD team that come in and do this. Let's try to get folks from each of these various practices to come and take the Rutgers course to kind of get their feet wet in not so much the specific templates, but it really just teaching the fundamentals of how to start thinking differently. So when we come into a room, that we don't have to have a long conversation convincing people of why this is important, that it's sort of embedded in how we think. So I do think that there is a broader education effort to bring experience design to those that don't do that, quote unquote, for their day job. I think for the experienced designers and researchers, strategists, IAs, prototype folks, this entire field would be, I think, needs. It's hard to say other than to elevate beyond, to really be able to look left and right to where they're charged with experience. Again, when we think about that journey map, right, we get so very good at, I think we've gotten so good at focusing on building the one thing, the iPhone, the app, the IoT devices, that these are all really, they're great, and obviously they're getting a lot of uptick, and people are engaging with them. But I like to think maybe a little bit more aspirational, that in doing all of this, that we're sort of hyper connected yet, and I think Theo Forbath just wrote a really great article about this on LinkedIn. But we're so interconnected, yet in some ways we feel more lonely than ever. And if our job, much to my the 10 Commandments of XD strategy, is really that we're about humans and we're about making lives better and enriching lives. And I think that in some ways, while we've focused on very specific things that make our lives easier, faster, quote unquote, more connected. I think those that are in this field that are thinking more strategically about that bigger picture need to really even take out beyond the products and the services and the companies and sort of think about how we can start to embrace larger elements of creating experiences within humanity. Again, I know it seems a bit lofty, but I do think that as social issues become more embedded in the fabric of organizations, that the millennial population, known and for their idea of it's not about the money, it's about the cause, I think that we all need to kind of take a step back and say, what does that mean? And how can we, using our craft and using our understanding of humans and how they interact with one another, elevate the roles that we have in ways that can bring us together, certainly in today's day and age where we just seem to be getting more and more tribal in our conversations, more and more bubbled in the kinds of things that we're doing. And if we want to solve problems within companies and within the world, I think we have a beautiful vocation to get us being part of getting a broader sense of communitas within the world.
It's a great idea. Did you sort of explain a little bit more about this idea of communitas?
Yeah, and I think it's something that it's a word that I stumbled into that existed for years. Victor Turner is a cultural anthropologist, and he did many of those studies of tribes and sort of how they interact with one another. And it's certainly in the music industry. It's certainly when you look at some of the marches that have gone on both sides of the political spectrum, there's a sense that when people are in the same location, experiencing the same thing at the same time, there's a sense of belonging and communality that I don't think we get, although we can see our friends on Facebook, etc. There's something about the equality that comes from that, and having been to a bunch of concerts last summer and planning to do a bunch of them now, I really had that strong sense of connection when you would see people that, for all intents and purposes, are going to get in a car with a Trump sticker and a Clinton sticker at the time, right, and be diametrically opposed on just about everything, unfollow each other on Facebook, and not ever have a word nice to say about each other, but we're literally linked arm in arm, singing the same song, that they brought with them from their past. But there was a connectivity there that I just thought was really powerful. And it just makes me think about, certainly that's a very physical presence type of communitas, but I just wonder, when you think about the memories and experiences that people have in life, that there's not too many products that you can look at and say, boy, I'll never forget the first time I did X. But you'll never forget that concert, that event you were at, that time when you and others were together doing something. Those are the memories. Those are the things. That's the value in life that we draw from. And I just think that I think that there's opportunity for companies to find ways to do that. Again, depending on the company, it might be a little easier, for a music company, right, to do that than maybe somebody that's selling sort of industrial cleaners. That said, I think that we need to start turning our view towards where those might exist.
I really like the idea of the Communitas describing that feeling of an organisation discovering its mojo together. That for me is that's a pretty neat idea. Just in terms of I guess how do you think about the future for experience design and actually where it's going and its role in the world?
So this is one that is both a very strong interest, personally, obviously because it's how I make my living, but also again in that kind of broader lens. I feel like if we're doing our job the way we should be doing our job, if we are making those impacts culturally within an organization, if we are embracing a generation, I should say generations now, of folks that were born this way, that kind of understand and communicate in different ways, I think that our field, if we're doing it right, we shouldn't exist. And it sounds a bit provocative, but the need to have a strong advocacy for customer centricity feels like, again, it feels like it's going, getting a cup of sand on the beach and going and selling somebody on the value of sand. This is becoming more, again, and I think there's still going to be some years before this is fully entrenched. But I think that over the course of time, there will always be a role and a need for someone to, play a coordinating role, to play the, whether it's a chief customer officer, experience officer, somebody that needs to keep a company aligned to this as they move forward in good times and in bad. But I think generally speaking, the skills, the execution skills of experience design professionals, I think are going to become more native to all roles. That people are going to be, that it's going to go without saying that a developer can't just code. They're going to need to code that. They're going to need to try to engage, someone else in that. And there will still be, again, there's always going to be roles throughout an organization. But I think that you'll find that more and more this is more native to a lot of roles within business, certainly within the IT space, than they currently exist.
Well, thanks for your time today, Ronnie. That's all I've got. But if you're cool, I'd like to get you back to talk about sort of other topics around experience design and experience design strategy. Thanks very much for your time today, Ronnie.
Oh, happy, always happy.